Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and ladies and gentlemen, just a little off-the-cuff video about something that YouTube really wants us to talk about, especially as Canadians. Now, you might remember a while back I made a video where I was talking about leaving Canada, and then also talking about updating on leaving Canada. And to be real with you, I probably will still leave Canada. It's already been something that I've already thought of before. I already had these plans in my head anyways, but this might expedite the process just a little bit. Now, to understand, before we get into it, YouTube is not my job, all right? I don't treat this as my job, and if this was my job, I'd be stressed every day. Because things are completely out of my control. Call me a control freak, but when you work, when you have like your own thing going, and you're not really tied to one specific entity, like Google or YouTube or any social media, that you don't have complete control over its algorithm, over its distribution, over your payments, over anything, it's a real scary scenario. So for me, this is kind of like an internet diary, if you will. And that's just pretty much how I treat it, okay? Like, I'll make a video about, clothing companies if I ever feel like it. Sometimes I'll make a video about Nintendo pissing me off. And sometimes I'll just make a video on something totally random that nobody really expected. I wouldn't even expect it. Now, of course, some of these videos fail, some of these videos succeed. It really is just how YouTube works. If you go into it with that mentality, whew, your life is a whole lot easier. Now, of course, ladies and gentlemen, there is a new bill coming into Canada, all right, possibly, called Bill C-11. Now, Bill C-11 has left some of the country a little bit split. Every time I get into this topic, there's an aura of political, warfare that sort of happens. You've got a bunch of the left-leaning side going up against the right-leaning side, and honestly, at the end of the day, I'm not intelligent enough for either of this. I'm a pretty dumb guy, okay? I'm an engineer. That's about it. That's what I do. That's my background. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not somebody of the social mind, if you will. But when it comes to things like this, I tend to always vote for people that try to, bring as much fairness and rights to everyone as possible, hurt the least amount of people, and keep the country operational, okay? That's about as much research as I can do. That's about as far as I get into. When it comes to laws, and bills in this case, I like to read the actual material within them. So, ladies and gentlemen, I went to the website over here. This is Legisinfo. It's a Canadian website. And I decided to look into this exact bill itself. I wanted to see the text of the bill, so I wanted to go right to the source. Now, literally the reason I'm doing this is YouTube has now started new advertising campaigns to keep convincing us to keep YouTube yours, Canada. Let's go! Now, Canadians are kind of urged to go over to Ottawa, to Parliament Hill, and fucking petition for YouTube, YouTube Canada, Google Canada, or whatever social media services are out there. And the reality is, first off, guys, I'm just going to be honest with you, YouTubers and like the individual does not have enough power as multi-billion-dollar corporations, multinationals, that can lobby far more effectively. So I'm just going to put that one out there, okay? I don't really have 3 days in my busy schedule to go all the way down to Parliament Hill and talk to a bunch of fucking beggars in suits, all right? That's what I call politicians. But let's get into this whole scenario, okay? So first off, ladies and gentlemen, Bill C-11, all right? To understand what it's called, it is the Online Streaming Act, okay? And there are some sections of it that I wanted to specifically read into. Now, the reason why it puts the fear of God into YouTube and Google is that currently a lot of the content that you receive on YouTube is delivered with you through an actual proprietary algorithm that Google has developed. The algorithm factors in each user, basically people who are content creators or people who consume content, anybody that is signed on and has been fingerprinted by Google, okay? I don't even think you need to have an account. YouTube delivers your recommendations, the videos they think you're going to watch to you on your homepage, on the sidebar, whatever, okay? So what happens is the more you watch YouTube, the better profile YouTube has of what you like to watch, what you like to look at. Doubly good if you have a fucking Google account, so where YouTube can have a whole litany of data to deal with when crafting the recommendations to you. And generally, it does a pretty good job, okay? If you like watching naked yoga, okay, YouTube will just give you naked yoga videos, okay? If you like watching speed runs, YouTube will just give you speed runs, okay? If you like watching medical stuff, YouTube will just give you medical stuff, okay? And generally, the reason it does that is that they want you to stay on their platform and keep putting your eyeballs onto their website for hours on end. They don't want you to go to TikTok. They don't want you to jump ship over to like Facebook. They don't want you to go over to Twitter. They don't want you to go over to like any other platform. They want you to stay on YouTube. And the algorithm does a pretty good goddamn bang up job keeping you there. Okay, there's 24 hours in a day. Each of these social media platforms wants you connected to them for most of those hours. Now, of course, what Bill C-11 is trying to do is introduce the idea of government control or oversight over these algorithms. So, for instance, in Canada, there's a group known as the CRTC. The CRTC, in the current text of the bill, is allowed to look at what Canadian content is Canadian enough. So the term CanCon is applied through a set of rules and a bunch of different factors, and basically if your content is not Canadian enough, you could be stifled in the algorithm. The other big thing about it is that if Canadian creators are pushed artificially to their own users, so for instance, if you're somebody watching in Canada, all right, like you're accessing YouTube from Canada, from a Canadian IP, from an ISP, then you're probably going to get more Canadian creators to you, regardless of if you were interested in them or not, okay? So for instance, let's say that you want to watch, I don't know, somebody like Moist Critical more than I would, okay? Charlie, good friend of the show, all right? I've looked at my analytics. A lot of us share that user base. If you were living in Canada, YouTube would artificially give you my video over Charlie's. And that's not because Charlie's video is, in terms of quality, better than mine, all right? It may actually be a video that you might be more interested in than whatever I would make. But you won't get that in your recommendations given how these recent bills are written, okay? It's going to try to promote me. Now, because you see my fucking face on the sidebar or the recommendations, you're like, damn, I don't want to watch Mutahar for this. So you don't click on me, and YouTube gets that data. They said, hey, I literally put this guy up for this user. They did not click on it. Therefore, this person is not, interesting, or they fell off, or whatever it is in the algorithm. That data gets applied globally into the international algorithm. So you, as a Canadian, if you don't watch your Canadian creator that's been pushed to you, that Canadian creator, when actually viewed in other larger markets like the United States, the United Kingdom, India, whatever, they get fucking downplayed, all right? That's pretty much how we've been told through Google, okay? And of course, you can read this for yourself. This is from October 5th, all right? They've literally been sharing this as ads. This is from the Chief Product Officer at YouTube. And they've literally said what I've exactly just told you in this entire graph for yourself. You can pause the video and you can read this whole section for yourself, all right? Now, there's been plenty of other Canadian creators out there from different sectors, like the gaming sector, for instance, where you've got actual people running game studios who are afraid of this bill and the oversight that it has. Because what could happen is if Canada passes bills like this, other countries could feel free to pass similar liking bills. Now, before we get right into that statement, I wanted to read some of the bill for you as well, okay? Now, of course, according to the bill, they have some exclusions, okay? Certain transmissions over the internet. Now, this is a big thing. User-generated content, okay? So content that the average user generates. Now, YouTube, Google, most sites, Netflix, Disney+, they agree that because they're streaming platforms, and this is the new internet that we live in, certain aspects have to be treated with CanCon or professional requirements. If you make music videos, if you're making movies, they should fall under these regulated sort of guidelines, okay? These regulated algorithmic searches. Now, when it comes to user-generated content, like your average YouTuber who's not a big company, who's not a big organization, they should be treated differently. Now, of course, the lines are a little bit more blurred at YouTube because YouTube allows you to upload professional-grade music videos, professional movies, alongside the average YouTuber Andy, okay? So again, with that one algorithm feeding all those different types of content, it gets even scarier. It's not so much scary for something like Netflix, for instance, which is its own broadcaster in its own sense. Now, of course, times have changed. We're not renting movies at fucking Blockbuster. We're not renting movies, out of nowhere. We're literally on the internet most of the time. We're getting things delivered right to our boxes, right to our TVs from a server in some part of the world. So again, if you look at the bill here, a person does not carry on an online undertaking for the purposes of this act, in respect of a transmission of programs over the internet. That is ancillary to a business not primarily engaged in the transmission of programs to the public, and that is intended to provide clients with information or services directly related to the business. Now, I think some YouTubers do start like businesses or LLC companies in order to incorporate their YouTube channels into. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. B, this is part of the operations of a primary or secondary school, not applicable here. That is part of an operations of a theater, concert hall, or other venue for the presentation of live performing arts. Again, not necessarily applicable in this situation. So they've got some exclusions and exceptions, but still, according to YouTube and according to, what their impact is, they're still worried that this could absolutely impact Canadian creators locally. Now, again, I have one thing to say on top of this, all right? For instance, when it comes to the government, they're completely out of touch with the average whims of the people around them. And when it comes to this law in specific, almost every single Canadian content creator I've talked to, literally every single one of them, they are not really on board with this bill. They're not really willing to be stifled internationally in an algorithm. And even if you leave the country, it's not as if it's that simple. If I just put on a VPN and start uploading things from Texas, so to speak, it's still not going to change me. It's still going to issue my content to Canadian creators and impact me. Now, I wonder how much this could still affect people from outside Canada, all right? Given the fact that I made my YouTube channel in Canada, maybe that puts me in a different place. And if you're like a creator from the US or Indonesia, you get treated differently. I wonder if YouTube could do something to their algorithm where this kind of data set generated by Canadian users could be incorporated differently. Maybe YouTube could do that, but then again, there's been no discussion of it. I'm sure the algorithm is a very confusing mess for the engineers behind them. And yeah, I guess that's where we're kind of sitting at. I don't really feel like I need the government to sort of inflate my content or deflate my content. I feel like that should pretty much be left up to you, the viewer, and how your algorithm affects me. If I make good content, then I would hope that it gets recommended and people watch it by the sheer of virtue, if you will, or merit. But that's generally not something that's going to be a thing if the government can start controlling what the algorithms truly do. I think the other big thing is the idea of protectionism. So obviously for CanCon and a lot of these rules, they're designed to protect Canadian users. And the reality of it is that protectionism might sound cool on paper, but when we're operating in a literal global village, it tends to actually harm the user, in this case, specifically the Canadian content creator, more than the average person, okay? It's a little bit fucking wild if you look at it. Now, the other big thing is, what scares me necessarily is what stops other countries from creating similar laws like this. If this law is to pass in Canada, what's to stop countries like Russia, India, the United States, or really any country to implement laws that could also in effect harm their own creators? It's almost like I'm looking at an era of like the internet being sort of like governed, or certain sects of the internet being governed by their own countries. So Canadian internet operates entirely different than US internet and Chinese internet and so on and so forth. And for the last big bastion of technological freedom, I don't think that's necessarily something that should be okay, or something that shouldn't be something most people are cool with. Now, according to YouTube, there's actually limited awareness based on like research done for people who don't know what this bill is about. And for that, I highly recommend you go to the actual website if you're Canadian and read the bill for yourself. Again, before you completely commit to anything. Also, if you're YouTube, I don't know how much you can do when you're just asking your user base, your content creators, to push this for you. Google, you're a multinational company, okay? You're not just an American tech firm. You're a tech firm in Canada, everywhere else in the world too. So again, you got to pony up. You got to have your own coalition with all these other companies like TikTok, like Facebook, like Twitter, and actually find a way to rally all of your resources to stop the government from pushing this through. Because the only people that benefit from this really seems like legacy media, okay? And that's about it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much all I got to ask, all right? That's pretty much all I got to say. Every time I get pushed to do this, or every time I get reminded of this, I'll make a video. I'll make a video updating people onto it as well, too. I literally, the last time I made this video, I was criticized in like DMs that maybe I was falling for some political Kool-Aid nonsense. I literally do not jump into any of that side. I am literally reading the bill as it is. And right now, because of the vagueness of how they treat user-generated content and the specialty of YouTube's website being that it caters to like everything, yeah, it makes you wonder, okay? It makes you question things, all right? It makes you wonder just how much control the federal government, a lot of these governments have in the distribution of user-generated content. So ladies and gentlemen, that's all I really got to say. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how this will turn out, but eventually I know that I'm out of the country at some point anyways. So maybe it won't be my problem, but who knows? Who actually knows, all right? One thing I learned about the government, one thing I learned about politics and laws is I, as a solo person, have really no say. All I can do is raise awareness, and that's what I'm doing right now. This is me, Mudahar, and I'm out.